science is full of surprises, from weird space particles to mysterious underwater creatures. But sometimes the biggest surprises aren't out there somewhere in the cosmos or in some faraway rainforest. They're right under our noses. And when scientists make discoveries about the world that seem too crazy to be true, they don't always reveal the whole story right away. We've already made a video about 3 surprising science discoveries scientists didn't tell us about right away, and today we'll look at 3 more. If you love science and tech stories, stay tuned for more. And now, on to the story. 1. Water can boil and freeze at the same time. When most people think of water, they picture H2O existing as a solid ice cube, a liquid puddle, or a vapor in the air. Sure, water can do all those things, but that's not the whole story, because under very specific circumstances, water can actually be all 3 at once. Water can boil and freeze simultaneously. For this unusual trick to work, you need both low temperature and low pressure, which isn't easy to achieve. The exact combination needed is a temperature of 273.16 degrees Celsius and a pressure of exactly 611.2 pascals. At these values, liquid water, ice, and water vapor can coexist. This is called the triple point of water. It's one of the most well-defined points in all of physics. In achieving these conditions precisely enough to observe, the triple point was one of the early triumphs of experimental physics in the late 19th century. It took until 1961 for anyone to get photographic evidence of water at its triple point. The photograph was taken by physicist Charles William Astin of Uppsala University in Sweden. Even after that, though, talk of the triple point didn't spread far beyond physicists. According to a paper published in 2017, most people still don't know about the triple point, even though it's such a neat demonstration of the properties of water. But researchers have developed ways to take advantage of the triple point, such as making highly accurate thermometers. Because the temperature at the triple point is so well defined, it makes a great reference point for calibrating other thermometers. Researchers have also explored using the triple point to store and process quantum information. That's because water at the triple point is in a strange quantum state, where it has properties of both a solid and a liquid. Physicists are just beginning to understand what might be possible with this technology. So the more people who know about the triple point, the better. 2. Helium can defy gravity. Helium is one of the most common elements in the universe, but it can do something on Earth that seems almost alien-like. Under the right conditions, helium can literally defy gravity. At room temperature and atmospheric pressure, helium behaves like any other gas. But when it's cooled to just a few degrees above absolute zero, it turns into what's known as a This means it flows without any energy being lost to heat. But the most remarkable thing about superfluids is that they can move through narrow spaces without any apparent force pushing them along. In other words, they can climb walls and even defy gravity. Scientists first predicted the existence of superfluidity in the 19th, but it wasn't until 1949 that they confirmed it in liquid helium. Since then, researchers have observed helium defying gravity in various creative ways. For example, one team found that if they spun a container of supercooled helium, the fluid would form cool spirals in other shapes. Meanwhile, another group of scientists managed to create a superfluid helium fountain that defied gravity for several centimeters. The reason helium can do this is related to how it interacts with itself at the atomic level. Normally, atoms are constantly bumping into each other, and when they do, they exchange energy. But in a superfluid, atoms are in a state known as a Bose-Einstein condensate, meaning they don't bump into each other. Instead, they pass straight through one another. It's like trying to bump into someone who isn't there. As long as atoms don't interact with each other, there's no force to pull them back down to Earth. In the past, scientists weren't sure if any other fluids could exhibit these properties. But since 1995, researchers have found superfluidity in several different substances, including a type of condensed matter called a supercooled atomic gas. And they've even found superfluidity in space. In 2018, an international team of astronomers reported finding evidence of a superfluid on the surface of a neutron star. All this means that while helium may be the first element we discovered that can defy gravity, it probably won't be the last. 3. Our oceans make over half of Earth's oxygen. Most people learn in school that trees and other plants produce the oxygen we breathe. That's technically correct, but it doesn't tell the whole story. Although terrestrial plants do generate over a quarter of the world's oxygen, scientists have discovered that the rest of it comes from a much more unexpected source. Tiny organisms living in the sea, such as phytoplankton and seaweed, produce over half of the oxygen we breathe. Phytoplankton are single-celled organisms that live in the sunlit surface waters of the oceans. Like plants, they use photosynthesis to convert sunlight into energy. As part of this process, they absorb carbon dioxide and release oxygen. While individual phytoplankton are too small to be seen with the naked eye, their combined biomass is enormous. According to one estimate, there are 10 times as many phytoplankton cells on Earth as there are human cells. Together, they account for 40% of the planet's photosynthesis. Despite their importance, scientists knew relatively little about phytoplankton until the mid-20th century. That's partly because the organisms are so small and fragile that they're hard to study in the wild, and partly because scientists just didn't know how to collect data in the middle of the ocean. It wasn't until oceanographers developed new tools and techniques to explore the depths that they realized just how important marine organisms were to the global oxygen budget. Since then, scientists have learned that the amount of oxygen produced by the world's oceans varies depending on the season and location. For example, the Southern Ocean produces more oxygen than it consumes, whereas the Northern Ocean is a net consumer of oxygen. But overall, the oceans produced around 50% more oxygen than the atmosphere can hold, meaning that oxygen is constantly being released into the atmosphere from the sea. Researchers are still working to understand the role of marine organisms in producing oxygen. For example, scientists have only recently figured out how to count individual phytoplankton cells in seawater, and they're still trying to figure out how climate change will affect the balance between oxygen production and consumption in the oceans. But one thing is clear: without our oceans, we wouldn't be able to breathe. In a way, it's kind of disappointing that scientists don't always share the full story behind their discoveries. After all, who doesn't love a good surprise? But there's a reason why scientists tend to share only part of the story at first. It's because science is a process, and every discovery raises new questions that researchers need to answer before they can fully understand a phenomenon. By sharing only part of their findings at first, scientists can build excitement for follow-up research and inspire future scientists to fill in the gaps in their knowledge. That's why we love science. It's never boring, and with your help, we can continue to make fascinating science accessible to everyone. Thank you for watching this Sea Show video.